Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Marie-Hélène Bellemare and Pierre Moissin.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So my name is Marie-Hélène Bellemare, and I'm here with Pierre. We are with Frima Studio. We are very proud to be introducing this next panel. And they're for many reasons, but one of them is that we developed, along with Games for Change and a number of sponsors and partners such as Zynga, for the Half the Sky movement, we developed a Facebook game called Half the Sky, the game, and it's really a game about women's rights issues. It's about women empowerment, so we are very close to this issue. This game was actually launched last year, so I hope that some of you guys have played it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so underrepresentation of women in the video game industry has always been an issue. As we're concerned at Frima, we always try to promote the inclusion of women in our workforce. I've been in the industry for 20 years, and we always try to explain the phenomenon. Historically, is it because video games were associated with male teenagers playing in their basement violent games? And did it create an effect of not for me, for women? At the same time, it's sexist to say that because some women, they love first-person shooters. So now that the democratization of the video game industry has occurred and everybody plays, we hope there's not any reason for women not to feel that it's their place too. At Frima, we have about 25% of our workforce that are women. We're working actively to promote careers for women. When we do conferences in universities and colleges, we invite women specifically, and we hope that the ladies that are here will give us good explanation also, and I love the fact that they work for that cause because I think it's a cause. And I also think that the more we'll give roles to women in the games, that they can be role models, it could also help a lot for women's accrued presence in our industry.
All right, so actually for the first time, Games for Change brings together 3 great thought leaders and people who are really on the forefront on this issue. So I'm really proud to have with us today Jane McGonigal, who needs very little introduction at this point, but I do want to mention that she's an amazing role model, and she is a game designer, and there's not that many female game designers in the space. Also, Constance, all of them are doctors. Constance Steinkuehler. So Constance is a former senior policy analyst at the White House Office of Science and Technology, and she's also a leading academic researcher. Also leading this panel is Dr. Idit Harel. Dr. Idit Harel is actually ed tech. She is an ed tech innovator, and she's also a CEO, as well as being an award-winning author. So please, a hand of applause for our speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Doctors. We were laughing. My kids always ask me, are you a doctor of what? What are you a doctor of?
Literacy studies, officially.
Here we go. And you?
Performance studies, which is, nobody's ever heard of it. Oh, except at NYU, they have a department of performance studies here. There are only 3 programs in the world, so.
I'm a doctor from the MIT Media Lab, actually in the Department of Architecture, but my doctorate is in Media, Technology, Arts, and Sciences. So, here we are today. Delighted to be here to just have a conversation, and we promised to each other to speak little and allow you to ask questions. You'll need to really raise your hand so the microphone will get to you. We're going to just take the first 10 minutes and talk about some issues that we think are really important. We are not going to talk about statistics. We want to take the conversation about why is it that there are still just 10% of women in this incredible industry. I mean, it's absurd. Do you agree it's absurd? Raise your hand. Absurd, right? There is no other industry with only 10% women. especially an industry that is so impactful and important for the future of our world. We should really change that. We want to take the conversation up a level. We want to ask big questions. We invite you to start thinking about big questions. We're also taking questions from Twitter, so please feel free to, those of us who are watching us online, don't hesitate to ask questions. Twitter, it's gender for G4C. Gender, number 4, G4C. So, all of us are highly entrepreneurial, women. We are entrepreneurial at the forefront of industries or learning cultures when we are making things for both men and women in the way that we each work. So we're not differentiating ourselves as women who are working on gender issues, but all of us uniformly are concerned about that. You know well, Constance, from your work on diversity, that there is an issue about this in the game industry. It's a popular topic. And from your perspective, how close are we to achieving gender parity? Be wild with your...
How much of this audience is actually women in this industry?
A lot.
Okay, thank you for showing up. Today, yesterday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We are nowhere near gender parity. It's interesting, I was at a Women in Games event at GDC, and there was just hundreds of amazing, smart, creative women in the audience. And after the event, we were having these conversations, and they were bringing their problems about their workplace stuff and what their workplace gender climate is like. And I had to say again and again, you do know that this is totally unacceptable and completely not accepted in any other environment, perhaps maybe than Wall Street. So it's interesting to me that our gender climate has gotten so toxic in many ways on the industry, and I know that sounds a little bit shrill, but it befuddles me why we aren't calling it out more frequently. Even if we see, and I know we're not going to get into too many statistics here, but even if I think the stat that they have out right now is like 23% of women in games production, well, 23% of people in games production are women. If you go down and disaggregate and look at things like coding, it goes down to like 3 or 4%. I will tell you something, when you sit in the meetings with people who are making decisions, it is no women in the other room. There's no other women in that room, right? So we are nowhere near gender parity at many, many levels, I would argue.
What do you think, Jane?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that we have so many women represented at Games for Change. And if you go to events like Games for Health and events where it's about games for education, you see a much higher percentage of women leading projects, of funding projects, of developing the projects. And that, for me, is one of my great hopes for the future of the game industry. If we have more women in the game industry in general, I don't think we will see Games for Change as such a separate sphere from game development in general, because women who are coming into the game space, they are coming into Games for Change and for education and for learning at much higher rates than they're going into games for entertainment. And I think that's because I'm sure today we're going to have a lot of generalizations, but many women are inspired to make a difference, to make a social impact, and seeing games as a space to do that is really driving up the numbers for participation. And if we did achieve gender parity in the industry, I think most games would be games with positive impacts that are intentionally designed and measured and celebrated. So that's my hope for bringing more women into the field.
So 2 points so far. First of all, I think we share that view that there is something about this movement of games for impact, games for change, that is really becoming more mainstreamed. And coupled with this is the idea that maybe Games for Change as a movement is a place that is attracting a lot of women, that is attractive to women. And so we're beginning to see women in a lot of roles, and that may be a really great pathway or gateway for the gaming industry in general. So that's kind of like a couple of hypotheses that I think are intertwined that we were brainstorming about. And would you be able to work differently, Jane, as a woman who's a leading game maker, game designer conceiving like really far out ideas about games, do you think you will be able to work differently if there were more women around you in all roles, producers, coders, writers, animators? In what way? Why?
Right. Well, I mean, if you look at, my Super Better company has been largely female-driven. Our writers, our designers, our artists, the scientists we worked with at Penn, women leading that project, scientists at OSU, women leading that project. So in some ways, I feel like the work that I do is already kind of in a space where I am surrounded by amazing women. I think that's because of what I've chosen to focus on. My hope would be that these projects would not be so far away from the mainstream of the game industry if there were more women in the industry, that you wouldn't see such a divergence. There's no reason why. I mean, there's an amazing researcher, Daphne, who studies the positive impacts of action games like Call of Duty on cognition, right? Why is the industry not working with women like her, with researchers like her, so that instead of every time a new Call of Duty game comes out, the headlines are about violence in gaming or obesity in gaming. If we have more women in the industry, maybe those companies would be putting out much more exciting and promising stories about the research that we're funding, about the positive impacts. I think that more women in the industry will mean more conversation, more general awareness of benefits and positive impacts. And then we can, and many of the games we're already making have these impacts and have this potential. But it's just not easy to communicate when the messaging seems to be driven by, discussion of either the technology advances or this issue of content and violence.
Great. And Constance, from your perspective, do you think your work will be any different if you'll have more women around you? Will you create different things?
Well, it's interesting. I'm listening to your story. It's like I think about my research lab, and it's predominantly strong women, doctoral students, strong female colleagues. Even if you look at this event, like look at the representation here, I think we are seeing a very different ecosystem in games for impact broadly, whether it's change or learning or health or whatever, than you're seeing in mainstream industry. And that really shouldn't surprise us. If you look at computer science majors, once you add projects that are game related, you increase retention and you increase diversity of who stays in those programs. When you add things like social impact, forget games, just social impact sort of projects in computer science, you see the numbers for women go skyrocketing by comparison to where they are now. So we're at this perfect confluence. And so I don't think that my work has really changed. I would say, though, that I think that there are, in some ways, more broadly, outside of Games for Impact, like these communities that we've sort of watched grow up over the last 10 years, I think in some ways there's kind of a failure of leadership to create environments that attract more female talent, that retain that talent, and that raise that talent up to the decision-making capacity that they should be at. I mean, how many AAA companies are led by women right now? Right? How many impact companies are led by women? Right? So my own work would not change, but I have a feeling that the overall landscape of games definitely would.
So, Jane, you think you will really create different kinds of games if there were more women around you? Or do you think you will create maybe similar themes, same vision, but maybe they will express themselves in a different way? Can you maybe be more specific about that?
Oh, well, I wouldn't be doing anything different. I'm like Constance. I'm surrounded by women all the time. It's great.
Are.
Yes, my teams are. But I think, and this is something we've been discussing backstage at the conference this week, the desire to discuss players' lives and the impact of all games on players, and to understand the people that we make games for in a really kind of deep, with deep empathy and compassion. I hear more women thinking in that way currently in the game space, as opposed to the technology or the hardware or the sort of the message or the artistic integrity, the elegance of the systems, these sort of abstract ideas. So I think that we would be making games with more of a focus on players' real lives, whether they're games for change or not, really understanding the players better, that there would be more of a focus on that, which I think we do need. And I really loved the talk we saw 2 sessions ago about measuring impact, and before that, the typologies of impact. To me, that is something, when I speak to women in the industry, they're obsessed with impact. Whatever kind of games that they're making, entertainment or games specifically designed for impact. And so I think, but that's a very offensive message to a lot of people. I mean, this is, I didn't attend the Games for the Game Development Conference this year for the first time in 13 years. Because I have found that I feel like I've sort of hit a wall there with people being receptive to thinking about impact and to owning the responsibility that everybody has. Everyone who makes games, I believe, has an ethical responsibility to think about the impact of that game, because people spend so much time with what we make, and that it's in their family and it's in their lives, and it's deeply affecting their brains and bodies. That women that I've spoken to there seem to be aware of that more than men. So, and don't resist carrying that ethical weight. I'm sorry for generalizations. Remember that throughout.
We're throwing a lot of hypotheses here, and I would like the audience to think about challenging us on that. Let's talk a little bit about the players, the player base. It is still not a very popular thing to be a hardcore gamer if you're a girl, growing up. At least that's kind of like when I meet girls in our programs. That's the notion I'm getting. What do you think about that? Is that important? Don't you think we need to also do something to cultivate more women in the player base? And how will that change the industry? Constance, you talked a little bit with me about that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I'm not sure what the answer is. Though I also think that only recently, with the rise of mobile platforms, have we seen games diversify to a point where we're appealing to more women and young girls. And I'm less interested in sort of the category of hardcore gamer. I myself have been in the category of hardcore gamer. I've also been in the category of kill your television, not consuming any media whatsoever in my lifetime. But I think that when we start actually creating a broader diversity of titles, I think that we'll see more people taking up those titles, and not just diversity of gender, but diversity of gender orientation, diversity of ethnicity, of background, of socioeconomic class. The way I used to come at this issue was really about mathematics and science, so science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and thinking about games as a hook to get more women into those fields, because I think that that's inherently a value in our society. And it's funny, like lately I've just sort of scrapped the STEM thing and just been like, how about this? I want more women in games. Not as a vehicle for STEM, I want more women in games. And the reason for that is that I'm deeply moved by this medium, and I think it's so narrowly defined right now. And I've come to the painful conclusion that until we actually diversify the people who are creating in this particular medium, that we may very well not see the level of diversity that we could have in artistic expression, in beautiful things, in scary things, in things that are troubling, things that are, sticky and funny. But I just think you have to have that kind of diversity, and we don't yet, and we should.
Yeah, and I think we need to encourage the player base to include more women, and of course to make games that are appealing to women, to encourage women to play any game that is out there, because it's just like reading. If you don't read a lot in a lot of different kinds of genres of books, you cannot really become a very creative writer. And the more we engage them in making games, I think it will be a pathway for them to really go and play and try many different kinds of games, not necessarily games that they like, but just to kind of master different games in different environments so they can think about maybe better solutions.
I wanted to build on this idea of hardcore gaming versus other kinds of gaming. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that the minute we have as many female gamers on the planet as there are male gamers, that's when we start saying, well, the games that they're playing aren't real games.
Right.
They're casual games,
Right.
or those aren't the hardcore gamers. They're not core gamers. That doesn't help our case when we try to think about, why aren't women spending more money on games, spending more time on games? Well, we've just said that what they're doing doesn't count. And I don't think it's an accident that if you look at a lot of the games that are created in the Games for Impact space, they do tend to be more mobile games, more casual games, more social network games, partly because they're easier to make, they're easier to get funding for, partly because they appeal to a broader audience. So depending on what audience you're going for, whether it's in the developing parts of the world or you're trying to do outreach to women about their sexual health, there's a lot more games that look like the kinds of games that many of these women that we're saying are not hardcore gamers play in the impact space, which may be one reason why we have more women represented in the space, because the games look like the games that women tend to statistically spend more time and money playing. But we have to stop. I think we have to stop. The only reason to, I think, even worry about hardcore games is that there seem to be some cognitive benefits to them that you might not get from other games. So, okay, if that's what you're interested in, cognitive benefit, we need more women
To get engaged in that,
playing
definitely.
those super action, high intensity, kind of AAA games.
Yeah, because we believe in the cognitive benefits, and I think that's why we think women should give it a shot and really get into it. And then eventually they can come up with ideas of how within that hardcore game genre do something that maybe is suitable for what they like to do. still
Sure,
in the
if that's, but there are social benefits, there are
Yeah.
physical benefits, there are emotional benefits.
Yeah.
So it might just be, that's just one area of where we're trying to make impact.
Any questions? Let's open it up, and then we can circle back if there are no questions. Raise your hand, and you'll get the microphone so we can really hear you, and also the people who are watching us
Hi,
online.
yeah, my name is Peggy Sheehy, and I teach a project called WOW in School, where my 6th grade humanities class are involved in 3 arenas of learning: World of Warcraft, their companion novel, The Hobbit, and their real life as a hero. And this is the first year I actually brought it into the classroom. It's always been either an enhancement for gifted children or a program for the kids who were learning disabled or an after-school activity. So this year, it's their English class.
Great. And the question?
And the question, well, no, the question is actually not a question, a statement, because it's important. What happens is a lot of the girls look at this and go, I don't like video games. And I said, why? Why don't you like them? And it's because they've been only exposed to their big brothers playing things where the female characters were topless or just about, or there was just guns and things, and that's all they see. They don't understand the complexity. They don't understand what's going on in there. Now, once they get in, they love it. But how do we tell the game designers to, hey, you know what? Pretend that character's your sister and put some clothes on her.
Good point, good point.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Any other questions? Yes.
Hello? Okay.
Okay,
We
good.
actually have questions from Twitter as well. So
Oh, good.
Hi, we have a question from Twitter. It's from Trang Ho. What are 3 things that we as individuals can do immediately, tomorrow or next week, to increase women in edtech or tech in general?
Great. Well,
I think each of us contributing to this, so let's
that's
kind
great.
of respond.
So one thing is pick a woman that you know. If you don't know one, find someone. Google women in games and find somebody.
Do you not know a woman?
A woman in games. And shine a spotlight on the work. Tweet about a game they've made. Tell people go play this game, or you put it on your Facebook wall, or make a T-shirt with her face on it or something. But pick one developer to shine a spotlight on. I'll start by saying there's a wonderful game developer named Chelsea Howe, who is my lead designer on Super Better, and last name's Howe. If you don't know her, you should Google her and play her games.
Great idea. Constance. Wait. We
We
want
do
each
2
of us
more
have a
ways.
different take on that question. Yes.
I think that's terrific. I mean, I think promoting one another's work and whatever platform you have, using it to actually grab the hand of other women in your area and pull them up with you. The game is not really a fair game right now, and we have to make it a fair game by getting more women represented in decision-making roles.
And we at globaloria.com are educating a lot of girls. We've been already reaching to 3,795 girls. And also close to 800 teachers, of which 70% are women, and they're learning how to make games in order to teach it. So we're very proud of our ability to reach girls starting young, upper elementary, middle school, and high school. One of our students was a speaker this morning, Geraldine, and I know that she became the star of the session. And she was not a girl who thought of herself as a gamer or a hardcore gamer or a person who will ever engineer a game, but she got into it because the school offered it, and she discovered that talent in herself. So find a school and find a group of girls and make sure that the school is teaching these girls how to think up good games, games for change, and teach them how to make them. Yes.
Hi. I'm a gamer. I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, who are both gamers. First off, I think the social stigma of being a female hardcore gamer is dissolving quickly. I know a lot of females who are loud and proud hardcore gamers.
Let's clap for them.
Constance, I'm going back to some points you made earlier about bringing women into games, whether it be players, developers, in the financial end, how there's no women running AAA game companies, and how the gaming industry needs to sort of foster an environment to attract more females. Can you tell me what that environment looks like to you? What it should be?
What it looks like now, or what it should look like?
What it should look like.
50-50. Any doubt?
No, what would attract, so for example, I wouldn't take a job running a AAA company for many reasons. What would they have to do for you to make it seem like an appealing environment?
So I would like to see equal representation of women at all levels of the company. But I mean, I would actually go probably more radical than that. I think that some of the ways that leadership are making their decisions really don't represent how I think leadership unfolds, especially in the 21st century. I think it's very sort of 1980s and 1990s kind of mentality. As far as attracting more women, I mean, we might start by making games or insisting on sort of representations of women in games. I mean, if you're going to humiliate me by putting up objectified pictures of women, then I want to, why is it only females that get that kind of treatment? I mean, I find it, maybe I'm not supposed to admit this, but I'm a grown, fairly successful woman, and there are games that I play. I have a 4- and a 6-year-old boys, and I find them humiliating to look at the ways that I'm depicted in games. And there's some basic things like, you have complex branching narratives, but I can't choose to be a girl. Thank you, Molyneux. Really? Like that's not an option for me in the early games. So I think that there's probably so many answers to that particular question, but I guess I just can't, I guess I'm trying to be very honest about it. I don't think that that the games industry has yet become a very gender neutral or gender welcoming place yet.
I mean, you could imagine companies developing a formal statement, in the way that we have.
And a pathway.
Yeah, but we commit to having playable women characters in every game that we make. Stop, and to have standards and commitments like that.
And a manifesto that includes that the company is committed.
Yeah, I
to this
guarantee you, if you had even just 3 simple ideas like that, it would be a beacon for all of the talented women. You could have at one company achieve 50%, parity just by doing that and attracting all of the awesome women to want to work with you.
And then we need probably education to kind of cultivate the leadership, the entrepreneurship, and the self-efficacy of women to see themselves as women who can run game companies and tech companies. Game companies are kind of a subset of media and tech. Yes. Any other question?
Hi, my name is Alex, and I work in sexuality education. Love all the gender stuff that I've been hearing about in your panel and a little bit of the talks yesterday. I'm kind of disappointed, though, that there aren't any men that are on stage talking about gender equality. And I want to ask you, what do you see as the role of men in advocating for gender inequality in games? You know, because you can't really have like a one-sided conversation about gender. Men definitely need to be a part of the solution.
Absolutely. And you know, Asi Burak invited us to do this. He's a great man. And you know, we have to give him credit. It was his idea to do this panel, and he put a lot of efforts in finding panelists that can really, because it's important for him as the CEO of this organization that is trying to make an impact and impact social progress in the nation and the world. And he was very involved with Half the Sky, the people who introduced us. And so I think that's definitely the man that got it all together, and a very big role that he's playing in this organization, I think.
But it would be, I mean, you go to technology events, and it's all, the women have to stand up and argue for why we want, you know, this and that. It would be great. I'd like to see, you know, I'd like to see Will Wright and Clint Hawking and all these, like, let them lead a session on gender in games and carry some of the load. Like that would be be great.
And it's gender, and it's an underrepresented minorities, and we are obviously not representing that. There's a long way to go on many dimensions of that question that we're kind of like just beginning to tickle here. So, yes. More questions from Twitter?
Yes.
Okay,
we have a question from Maddie Bryce. What do you think about the greater diversity in game development outside of for-profit and AA games, like in the indie game scene and outside of the for-profit scene?
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the face of the future.
Absolutely.
I think that, you know, it's not about us saving AAA or the typical sort of larger corporations that be. I think it's a matter of like that we will in fact blow this medium into its full capacity based on the fact that we're this diverse. That's what I think.
And I think, you know, I was really interested, you know, when Twine became a popular medium for first-time game designers, how quickly so many people in the industry jumped to argue that Twine, which is it's like an interactive, like fiction, words, a lot of words, storytelling platform. People jumped up and said, that's not really game development, and shut out this whole community of people who were making games for the first time in their lives, many of whom were not represented in AAA games. So it brings me back to that point of we have to stop choosing to define games in such a tiny way every time a new group shows up and wants to play. It's this defensive posture that really starts to make a lot of people feel on the margins of games, and we want them to make games and play games. So we should be saying, that's a game. It's kind of a game. Okay, yeah, that's a game. Let's call it a game. You're in the game industry now, you know, and welcome them.
And I think here in the movement of Games for Change, we have to be thoughtful, extra thoughtful, because of all the things we said today in the panel of how this can be an ideal pathway for a lot of women to experience, to play, to participate, to create, and to lead. And so I think at least all the things that we have to do every day as we hire people, as we build teams, as we recruit people to be in our education programs or whatever it is, and how we're really putting extra efforts in including underrepresented minorities and women. And I think if we're very thoughtful about it and each of us will do something about it every day, we probably can make a difference starting here. So thank you. Yeah, we wrapped up. Yes, do you want to say a final comment on that? Girls? Yes, we can.
Well, let me just thank Asi for working so hard to make sure that we had 50% of the speakers at Games for
Change is women.
Are women. So
yes,
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And I would just like to say, I mean, I love being able to look at a games-based event and see the diversity of the crowd that I see here. It's not every event, so I find this to be delightful, and I'm grateful for it.
And women are really good disruptors. This year, Games for Change is part of Tribeca Film Festival, and there is also the Disruptive Innovation aspect of Tribeca Film Festival, Tribeca Film Institute, and I think that women should just kind of like be the disruptors and not let it just, don't accept the status quo, and let's just act every day towards the 50-50 parity. Thank you.
Thanks.